Stalker 2 is an easy game to overthink. There's a lot going on, a lot of game mechanics and systems, a big open world, several story factions, lots of weapons, armor, artifacts. It's easy to get overwhelmed until you realise that none of it really matters unless you're playing on veteran difficulty. If you intend to do a veteran playthrough, then watch all the tier lists and download the spreadsheets and do the tricks to get the best gear as early as possible. But if, like me, you just want to play the game, enjoy the experience without punishing yourself, then leave the difficulty on Stalker or drop it down to Rookie when things are getting hard, because the game has a lot to see and it's well worth seeing. The difficulty and complexity shouldn't be a barrier. You don't need to get bogged down in all the information out there on what weapons, armor and artifacts you should be using or going out of your way to find. Just play the game, and that's what this review is. It's just me playing the game.
You know, you're always pulling your leg.
The biggest problem I had at the beginning was the performance. I hear the poor PC optimization has been a well discussed topic, and I suffered from that. The game's auto detection for my hardware selected epic graphic settings, as did the optimization in the Nvidia desktop app. It was unplayable on those settings though, running at seconds per frame, not frames per second. But the hardware monitoring was only showing my GPU hitting 80% and the CPU only 65%, so not even maxing out the hardware. I had to drop the settings down to medium before I got a consistent, smooth experience at a good frame rate. The game still looked great at that, but noticeably worse if you pixel peeped, walked right up close to textures on walls and that kind of thing. But it's a sure sign that it's an optimization issue if the game's running poorly and your hardware isn't even peaking. As far as the game goes though, once into it, there's a pervasive sense of danger and desperation throughout the zone. Everything is grimy and dirty, every weapon you pick up is probably broken. There's jeopardy to every expedition you take outside the relative safety of a base. You don't stay out for long periods. There's always something forcing you back to base, whether it's being loaded down with loot to sell or wear and tear on your weapons and armor. You go out on a mission, explore a location, grab what you can carry, and then return to base to sell it or stash it, upgrade your weapons and armor. That basic loot keeps you going throughout most of the game, especially if you're exploring without progressing the main story. And exploration is almost always rewarded with something to find and some dangerous encounters. In fact, every combat encounter is dangerous, potentially lethal, thanks to the omnipotent awareness of the enemy AI. It's pretty much the game cheating, but the AI sees you and shoots you no matter how you try to hide through trees, foliage, behind cover. It doesn't matter. The AI seems to know where you are once the shooting starts. The first 30 seconds of most engagements was me trying to find out where I was being shot from all the time. I was like, where are these enemies? I can't see them. And then when I do notice where they are, it's like they're behind a load of trees and a load of foliage and I can't see them, but somehow they can see me. I found I always had to have a weapon with a good scope in order to take on the enemies at those sort of ranges, because they were usually shooting me much further than I'd be able to get a good shot on them if I wasn't using a weapon with a decent magnification. You can just bum rush them with a shotgun. That works sometimes too if there weren't too many. But generally I found myself trying to pick most of them off at range with a semi-automatic assault rifle or a sniper rifle. And once you found where they are, you can get decent headshots on them and get pretty efficient kills. But it was always out in the open anyway, locating the enemies first that was the problem.
I got hit!
The gunplay is good, all the weapons feel satisfying and weighty, leaning towards the realistic end of the video game gun spectrum. Ammo isn't a trivial matter either. There's different types and calibers for almost every gun, and you can easily use more than you find, especially if your weapon of choice is chambered in a less common caliber. It promotes variety and experimentation and sometimes desperation in your choice of firearms.
What are you talking about, man?
The quests and missions are all pretty good, all seem to have a good reason to exist within the context of the zone, although I did find the overall plot quite confusing. There seemed to be a lot of nonsense being spouted from various NPCs that I didn't follow. In fact, I never really got a good handle on the wants and motivations of the various different factions. I mean, yes, there were some obvious differences, one of them being a very military faction, one of them being a very weird pseudo religious faction. I just never really got a handle on what they were fighting about. And there were some places in the main quest story where I took a side with one of them without even realizing it. It was sometimes as simple as just who you turn a quest item into, and it wasn't really made clear that this was a major decision that now affected the future of the story, and maybe even affects what factions are going to now be hostile or friendly to you, and what access to bases and repair and trader NPCs that you might now be forbidden access to. So I didn't think that aspect of the plot really came across very well. But there were good characters in amongst all that, some very good NPC characters, well done, good voice acting, good writing. I just never really knew what they stood for. There are several endings depending on your choices, and I felt like I just sort of stumbled into the ending that I got without consciously choosing it. But hey, maybe that's the best way for initial playthrough to go. Again, goes back to the theme of not overthinking the game. Don't worry about who you're siding with. Just do whatever you do and get the ending that you get. And if you want to see some of the others or make some other decisions, do it in a second playthrough. About 2/3 of the way through my game, I did have my fill of the random exploration. A lot of the hidden stashes are in some very frustrating places to find, including some, for me, very unwelcome platforming sections. Others were just, I couldn't work out how to get to them. And most of the stashes don't really yield enough of a reward to really spend a lot of time trying to find. There's good armor and weapons to find during the main quests, and if you really want to get a certain piece, then there's guides out there to look it up. At the point shortly before arriving in Pripyat, I decided to just focus on the main story quest, and some of them are quite long, leaving you without access to a trader or a tech NPC to sell loot or repair gear for extended periods of time. I found during those missions towards the end, I was being forced to use scavenged weapons rather than the weapons I'd brought with me, or I'd run out of ammo with the weapon I'd brought with me, and I had to use something that I'd picked up along the way. Even coming to the boss fights at the end of some of those long missions, I was using less than my optimal loadout. But inventory management and wear and tear on equipment is a big deal in Stalker 2, and something that always needs to be kept in mind.
Still here? Luck, it's dangerous to stay in the poppy field.
Once the main story is finished, the game is over. There's no option to continue to explore the world or any New Game Plus. So if you want to explore the whole zone, you need to do it before going past the point of no return in the story. And I found this a bit strange, as quite a lot of the zone remains uncovered if you only follow the main story quests. And normally this kind of game would give you the opportunity to return after the main story is finished to explore further after you've finished playing the game. But instead you have to make a deliberate decision to put the main quest on hold and then do your exploration before you get to the point where you cannot return. In the end, I didn't find there was enough of a reason to continue random exploration after a certain point. The whole grim and dirty, dilapidated aesthetic does start making locations look a little samey after a while. And I kind of knew when I'd had enough, and you'll probably know when you have as well. There are people that have done multiple playthroughs of Stalker 2 on veteran difficulty with no HUD elements. They farmed every artifact, collected every weapon and armor piece, And if you want to do that, you've got potentially unlimited playtime. For me, one playthrough, I felt that was enough, which was quite a lot of exploration and side content and gave me over 100 hours of playtime. And apart from some minor frustrations, they were 100 really good hours. You can dive deep into Stalker 2 and the zone, or you can just take a casual swim through the shallow end. Either way, it's no Roadside Picnic.